So next up, we're going to look at the front wheel. So the Velocette project came with an original front wheel complete with rim and spokes, but it's got what they call the pressed steel brake drum, which is basically renowned for being pretty useless as a braking, because I want to use this bike on track. I've got this later Velocette drum and hub, which is hopefully not going to be too far in keeping with the bike. And what I'm intending to do today is take the bearings out. They don't feel that bad, but you know, I'd rather put some new ones in. So I'm going to drift out the bearings, and then I'm going to look at the shaft diameter and work out what I need to do to make a buy some stock to make a front spindle out of mild steel. So watch along, and we'll take you along on the adventure. So that happened a lot quicker than I thought. I thought I'd give it a quick tap, so I've just used the trusty socket, and that fell apart really easy. So what you've got is a centre section which has got a raised shoulder so that the bearings come up against it. So it's not a taper roller bearing setup, it's just a standard roller bearing setup. And on this end, you've obviously got a fixed end with a thread in it. So we've got a threaded collar to hold this bearing in, which we're going to have to try and undo, which I reckon is going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to clean this up with a wire brush. I'm going to run some 3-in-1 oil in there, and maybe we'll need to get a little bit of heat. And in the meantime, I'm going to get a number off this bearing if I can, once I've cleaned it up. And see whether I can buy some new ones. All I can see, all I can see on the bearings is they're made in England. Good old blighty. And you've got a PA7 or an FA7. I think that's a P. PA7 and an RIV6. So I'm going to go and find out. Obviously I can measure them and do that, but this one is decidedly unhappy, and I could probably wash it out, and I could probably do all sorts of things, but there's no way I want to do that for a brand new bike. And then inside is all these bits and pieces that all need desperately. I mean, that came out fairly easy, to be fair. I just put a bit of white spirit around the outside after I cleaned the thread, and obviously someone's been in here and given it a few bangs with a hammer, but nothing, a little angle grinder just to clean the edges off. You don't need to murder these things up, but they all need a really good clean up of all the old grease. And then inside the drum, I'll give that a bit of a clean, and I'll bring you back once I've got some bearings. So that's what it looks like when you've got all the bits put together. So you've got the centre sleeve which goes inside the bearings. You've got these two grease deflectors that slide on there, stop the grease pushing through into the other side. You've got a threaded collar which clamps the bearing one side, so that fixes the movement, so there is none. And then we've got a dust cover and a centre pin. And then we've got the hub all cleaned, both sides. Thread looks good. And I've just given the hub a wipe over with some white spirit. Now basically I'm not going to restore this rim or this hub. It's going to go back together exactly how it looks. We're going to keep everything as unrestored as we possibly can on this bike. I know it's going to end up with some brand new rims and some brand new spokes, but there's a safety element to that, and there's also, I wanted to put some decent rims on it as well, so it's going to be a little bit of a fly in the face of that comment, but hopefully you'll understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And just like that, we got some brand new bearings. So I'm going to put some grease in these and then I'll put it back together again. So I've bought myself a bit of 5/8 mild steel. I've just polished it with a bit of emery in the lathe. So it's a nice sliding fit in the bearing. But what you'll notice is the actual brake plate is a smaller diameter. It's actually 1/2 inch. So I'm going to need to turn the ends of this mild steel bar down so I can put a 1/2 inch thread on the end and a 1/2 inch nut, which will clamp between the fork legs. And then I'm going to need to make some spacers to mount this between the fork legs and get the wheel or the hub in the right position. So at the moment, you can see my really big bench I'm using at the moment. I'm looking at that thickness in there, and basically I'm going to turn down the piece that's going to be protruding either side. I've put so I can make that fit, and then I can make the spacers. I've put the new shoes on the brake plate, so I've loaded up the brake plate, and that is going to want a spacer in there as well because that's actually running right to the bottom. So I'm going to need a spacer between the sleeve here and up to that. So I'll go and do some machining, and I'll do a bit of calculation about how long I want to make this, and I'll bring you back once I've turned it. But basically I'm going to turn both ends down to approximately 1/2 inch, so I can put a 1/2 inch UNF thread probably on the end and make a couple of nuts, I think, or I'll buy a couple if I need to. So that's the plan. And one thing I might not have explained while I was talking about the brake, this is a cast iron drum, and the original one is a pressed steel. So cast iron has obviously got a far better coefficient of friction, so it's going to give you a lot more stopping power, which is why this is actually better than the pressed steel. The material is going to allow the brake shoes to bite into it and provide the stopping that I'm looking for. Okay. So on the Velocette, and specifically on this front hub, I've made this new spindle. So I've had to reduce the diameter to fit various things, one of them being to actually fit through this hole for the brake plate. And I've tapped some threads on the end, and then I'm going to bring you back as I make a pair of nuts to go on here. So I've bought some hex bar, and I'm basically going to drill and then tap a thread in that, and I'm going to turn a diameter on the end of the nut. So if we use that as an example, although this is the wrong size, I'm going to make something similar to this where this diameter is going to be correct to mount into the spot face, which is on the girder fork on the Velocette. So hopefully that will make a lot more sense once I show you. So let's go with that. So the hex nut we're going to make is got to fit in that recess that you can hopefully see around there. So I'm going to measure that, and then when I make the nut, I'm going to make a turn down section that's going to fit as a nice sort of snuggish sort of fit in there. So this is the metal stock mild steel hexagonal bar, 25mm across the flats. We're going to turn into some wheel nuts for the Velocette front hub. Let's get going. So just to prove,